It was a cool fall day, the bright crimson in the trees showing the changing of the seasons. The children have grown to a new season as well, their bodies and minds honed through the training of the master. On the stone floor behind Mr. Adoy's house, the young man and woman wrestle for position, struggling to keep Corbat's size and strength from pushing her out of the boundaries of the stone floor. Launa does a quick sidestep, moving towards the middle of the ring. With the speed of a striking snake, Corbat lashes out with one hand, snatching the flag from her waist. Point, Corbat! Okay, Launa, you only have one flag left now, and then you're out. It's not over yet, Corbat. Enough talk. Back to your corners. Ready? Begin! Charging from his corner, Corbat lunges forward with one hand, attempting to grab Launa's remaining flag. With the grace of a cat, Launa swats away his arm and then spins around his elbow, grabbing his flag as she passes him. Point, Launa! It's a tie! Back to your corners. Next point wins. Ready, begin! Frustrated at losing his flag so easily, Corbat charges forward again. This time, he uses the length of his arms to his advantage, grabbing her shoulders in a desperate attempt to shove her out of bounds. Launa braces herself against the attack, but is met with such force that her feet begin to slide across the stone floor. As she nears the edge, Launa sidesteps, attempting to slip past his power. Her foot steps on a broad leaf, which slips out from underneath her. Launa grabs Corbat's arms, attempting to catch her balance, but her feet slip out from under her and she lands hard on her back. The young man, surprised by this sudden change of position, trips over her body, flipping head over heels and landing face first in the dirt. Match point, Launa! Mr. Adoy walks over and helps both winded students to their feet. No way, I should have won that round. I almost had her out and then she cheated. I didn't cheat, Corbat. I just slipped and fell. It's not my fault that you're so clumsy. Well, I saw someone else use a technique just like that, but it was a lot simpler. He just walked up, kicked the other person's foot, and they came crashing down to the ground. Ah, yes. The sweeping technique can be very effective. Okay then, old man, can you teach me how to sweep? Very well. With the assistance of his walking stick, Master Adoy grabs a broom that's leaning against the house and hands it to Corbat. Gesturing with his free hand, Mr. Adoy requests, "Sweep all of the leaves from the training floor." The young man throws the broom to the floor. I'm not your janitor, have someone else do your cleaning. Launa snatches up the broom and begins sweeping the leaves into piles. Remembering her earlier training, she finds that when she combines her horse and dragon stance, she's able to clear more leaves in a broader stroke. Some of the leaves, however, proved more challenging, fluttering through the air and then landing in the area she had just swept. She pushes on, and finally the floor is cleared. She holds the broom high over her head and shouts in triumph. Turning to Corbat with a smirk on her freckled face, she begins to dance and strum the broom like an instrument. Scanning the stone's checkerboard pattern, the old man approaches the young lady. It looks like you missed one. With one smooth motion, he kicks Launa's foot out from under her, leaving her flat on the ground. Corbat's laughter rings in her ears as she tries to catch her breath. From her vantage point on her back, she glances the leaf that once was under her foot, floating down and landing in the middle of her forehead. Helping Launa back to her feet, Mr. Adoy explains. Whether it is a foot or a hand, a brush or a broom, all are just an extension of the artist. In the same way the broom moves a leaf, you can move your opponent's foot. You must simply sweep under it. Come, Corbat, let me show you. No thanks, I get it. Let's get back to the game. They work hard throughout the day, and when their clothes can hold no more sweat, they take the long trek back to the village. After a long, hard day's training, Corbat's legs grow weary while making the journey home. I'm so tired. Why don't we take a break in the grotto up ahead? The forested trail opens into a small clearing. The sun peers down through the trees, warming a patch of grass next to a cool stream. They drop their packs with a heavy thud and lean them against a tree. Why does the old man have us carrying all these stones in our pack anyway? Stretching out the tense muscles of his back, he sprawls out onto the lush grass.
Well, Corbett, if you remember back to when we first trained with the Master, he said that no matter how strong you are, you can always be stronger. Maybe you need more of that, because all you do is complain.
Luna removes her shoes and cools her feet in the water. They take a moment to rest their muscles and regain their strength, when suddenly, Luna interrupts Corbat's thoughts.
Hey Corbett, that sweeping technique you asked the Master about. I recognize it. Where have I seen it before?
I don't know, I saw somebody use it in town a while ago. You know, I think I figured out the technique from watching you earlier. Let me try it out.
I don't think we should do that without the Master here.
Come on. I'll take it easy on you. Luna leaves the water and joins Kendrick on the patch of grass. To me, it looked like it was the same technique that I used to kick a ball. Like this. Corbat steps forward with one foot to close the distance. He then swings his other foot around, kicking Luna square in the calf with the blade of his shin. Luna drops to one knee and then rolls on her back, hugging her injured limb to her chest.
Ow, Corbett, that hurt. I think you gave me a Charlie horse. Obviously, you weren't paying attention. You're supposed to sweep the bottom of the foot, not kick me in the leg.
Don't be such a crybaby. You just tensed up before I hit you is all. Come on, let's cool off your leg in the stream. After a short time in the icy water, the throbbing inner muscle begins to diminish. Come on, Luna, let's try again.
No, we should wait and have the Master help us. Besides, we should get back to town. I still have chores to do.
They don their heavy packs and continue down the trail, with Luna slowly limping behind. Upon returning to the village, the children see an old lady getting ready to cross the street, her arms again loaded with bags from the day's shopping. It has begun to rain, so she delicately balances an umbrella with one hand. Corbat turns to Luna. Watch this, it'll be funny. He quickly runs up to the old woman and kicks her feet out from underneath her. She lands in the puddle, her bags breaking apart and scattering their contents on the muddy ground. Luna rushes to the woman's side.
Corbett, that wasn't funny at all.
As Luna helps the old woman to her feet, Corbat sees the mud stain to the backside of her dress and starts laughing. Ha 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 ha! It looks like she pooped herself!
Stop laughing. You should treat others how you want to be treated.
The woman praises Luna as she helps her gather the belongings. You're such a sweet young lady. Please, take this apple for your trouble.
It's my honor to help you. Never mind Corbat. He can only win fights against people that are weaker than him.
The expression on Corbat's face grows darker than the shadow of hair on his top lip. Enraged, he charges forward and kicks Luna's foot. Remembering the elusive leaf she had swept earlier, Luna lets her foot float upward, landing behind his foot. With a quick spin, her other foot kicks the pebbles from beneath Corbat's feet, bringing him down with a hard thump on his backside.
Oh! You think you've learned the technique, but you didn't persevere through the training to truly understand it. Here, take this apple. I'm sorry for teasing you earlier. I hope we can still be friends.
Luna extends her hand to him, but he slaps it away. I don't need your help. Leave me alone. Luna turns her back so that he cannot see the tears forming in her eyes. She walks back over to the groceries and scoops up a bag in each arm. Escorting the old woman back to her home, she leaves Corbat behind, sitting in the mud. By the time the children have returned to training on the next dawn, Mr. Adoy had already heard the news of the incident in town. Kneel, he said while pointing at the hard stones of the training floor. While he contemplates his words, they wait in silence, the hard surface bringing to their knees the pain they both felt in their hearts. Launa, you showed courtesy towards a villager in need. You demonstrated modesty by apologizing for your words and giving up your reward. You have shown the integrity to do what is right, even when being pressured by your friend. Someone with these virtues should be called a champion and allowed to carry a sword. From beneath his robes, he presents a long, thin sword. The handle and crossbar are shaped like a dragon entwining the blade. The dragon holding the weapon represents wisdom controlling strength. Continue to follow the path of the protector, not the fighter, and you will find strength beyond that of any sword. He then turns to the young man with a scowl on his brow. Corbat, a warrior needs to have self-control both when training and using his techniques. If you do not learn how to control yourself, others will have to control you. Your training today will be to clean the dung from the animal pens. Mr. Adoy leads Corbat back to the stalls. The old man hands him a shovel and directs him. Fill these buckets and haul the dung to where I can use it in the garden. The pens should be empty by the time I return. Corbat takes the shovel and enters the ox pen. He stops suddenly as he almost steps into a soupy pile. Recoiling in disgust, he takes a step back and then feels a squish as a warmth oozes into his boot. Ew, disgusting. Reluctantly, he scoops up a heavy pile and flings it hastily into a bucket, getting as much on it as in it. After heaping a few shovel loads, he fills the 2 buckets. Reaching down to grab the handles, he feels a warm squish between his fingers. Ugh, not again. Shoulders burning from the heavy load and lungs burning from holding his breath, he trudges to the garden and dumps the dung into a pile. Corbat stops for a moment to catch his breath. From here he can see Mr. Adoy lob apples at Leuna on the stone floor. She misses a few, but then cuts one in half. He hangs his head low. Why do I have to do this stinky, sweaty job and she gets to play with that sword? Sweat drenches his brow as he returns to the stables for the next trip. Look at all these pens. I'm never gonna finish this today. Noticing a pile of hay, he gets an idea. What if I just shove it all into a corner and then cover it with hay? It'll look like I finished and fed the animals. After completing his deception, Corbat goes to the nearby stream to wash his hands and his boots. Noticing the shade of a nearby tree, he decides, hey, since I finished early, I might as well take a nap. The day is a little cooler when he wakes. How long was I asleep? I better hurry back before the old man returns. As he approaches the stables, he can see Mr. Adoy putting the ox back into his pen. Corbat, I am pleased to see that you finished so quickly. Yeah, that job was so easy, I had time to feed the animals too. At that moment, the ox takes a greedy bite from the hay and quickly spits it out, revealing the dung underneath. What is this? Mr. Adoy takes a shovel and uncovers the rest of the pile. You should have had the integrity to do the job right the first time. Now, instead of helping me with the apple pie, you will have to start over. Reluctantly, Corbat sets back to work with shovel and pail, plodding to and fro until the sun hangs its head and it's time to go home. Their journey back to the village was long and quiet, each contemplating what the master had taught them that day. Corbat breaks the silence. That sword looks heavy. Maybe you should let me carry it for a while. Luna draws the blade to admire the steel, its wood grain pattern glinting in the sun. Ignoring him, she sheathes the sword and ties the cord of the scabbard around her waist. Come on, I'm sorry about what happened yesterday. Let me check it out, please.
It's not a toy, Corbat. If the master thought you deserved to carry a sword, he would have given you one.
They plod on and eventually stop in the small grotto next to the creek. It is a common rest spot where the shade of the trees wards off the heat of the sun and the cool water offers refreshment. There they sit quietly, Launa reflecting, Corbat plotting. From nearby comes a loud growl. Exploding from the bushes charges a large bear, its maw dripping with hunger. Luna jumps to her feet, her sword rings as it clears the scabbard. As the bear closes the distance, it rears up onto its hind legs. Terror grips them both. Corbat screams, "Help! Somebody help us!" Realizing that Corbat has no protection of his own, Luna takes control of her fear and steps forward into a dragon stance, placing herself between the monster and her friend. She shouts the fear from her belly, and the sword lets out a brilliant flash. Blinded, the bear howls in pain and stumbles back into the forest. Shaken, Luna returns the sword to its sheath. Corbat's nowhere to be seen. As she calls out to him, she hears a nearby bush start to shake. Quickly, her hand moves to the hilt of the sword. The blade clears the sheath and in the same smooth motion cuts the trunk of the bush, sending it flying into the forest. Light from the blade illuminates the huddled figure cowering behind the bush. Shaking uncontrollably, Corbat hugs his knees and forces his eyes shut. "Ah, don't eat me!" The light of the blade grows dull as Luna places it in the belly of the scabbard.
Don't worry, Corbat, it's just me. The bear's run off, we're safe now.
You should have killed it!
It was probably just hungry like we were. It smelled our food and just wanted some of it, not us. Now it's probably just looking for a less fierce snack.
They gather their courage and their gear and continue down the trail. When they return to the village, they both go their separate ways. Luna to her home, and Corbat to his. Corbat, however, cuts into a side path and stalks back in Luna's direction. He sticks to the shadows of the trees and the buildings as he follows her from a distance. As she enters the front door of her home, Corbat sneaks around to the back and peers in through her window. He watches as she admires the blade one more time, and then hangs the sword above her door the way her father had taught her. Corbat waits until she leaves the room to start her chores, and he can't help himself. How did she get it to glow? Taking a small knife from his belt, he pries the window open. Quietly, he climbs into the room, grabs the sword, and hides it in his cloak. Stealthily, he sticks to the edge of the forest, heading to a clearing he knows of. He has gone there many times with his father to dump garbage, a quiet but stinky place that people choose to stay away from. As he steps into the clearing, he draws the blade from his cloak, brandishing it before him. He concentrates on the sword, but no glow. He shouts, still no light. Giving up, he instead swings the sword wildly. Imaginary warriors fall one by one. Suddenly, a dog running through the clearing comes too close to a chaotic swing. Its tail falls to the ground, and the dog flees back to the village, yelping in pain. Oh no, the old man's gonna be furious! Hiding the sword back beneath his cloak, he drifts through the forest, avoiding all the trails and roads. The moon, lifting higher above the trees, illuminates the side of the house where Luna is currently washing the evening dishes. Corbat sneaks around the opposite side and then to the back of the house. Quietly, he sneaks back through her bedroom window and leans the sword against a wall. Corbat skulks back home down the dark and vacant roads. Alone with his thoughts, he contemplates his mistakes and how he would cover them. The next day, Mr. Adoy has come to the village for supplies. One of the villagers approaches him with a dog in tow, a bandage where its tail once was.
Look, Master Adoy, someone has cruelly removed my dog's tail. I noticed yesterday when one of your students returned to town, she had a new sword tied around her waist. I think she did it.
Master Adoy examines the sad, tailless dog and contemplates the villager's words for a moment. I do not believe that it could have been Launa, but I will investigate further and get to the bottom of this. The master sets out to Corbat's home. When he knocks on the door, Corbat's mom wakes him up and offers the master a cup of tea. Corbat, his hair like a crown of snakes, stretches and greets the master. Good afternoon, Corbat. A villager has approached me asking about a tailless dog. Do you know anything about this? What dog? I haven't heard anything about it. You know, you did give Luna a sword yesterday. Maybe she did it. Very doubtful. I will go and find out what she knows. After finishing his tea, he thanks Corbat's mom for opening her home to him and heads over to Luna's house. As Master Adoy approaches her home, he finds her on her hands and knees in the garden, helping her father pull the weeds. Greetings. Launa, a dog from the village has had its tail cut off. 2 have now pointed their finger at you. What do you have to say for yourself?
Oh no, poor puppy. I'm sorry, Master, I don't know anything about it. Last night I hung my sword above my door and I left it there until our next lesson. Come, let me show you.
She leads the master back to her room, only to find an empty space above her door where her sword once hung. She quickly scans the room, but the sword is nowhere to be found. A panic grips her heart when suddenly she notices it leaning in the corner behind the door.
Something's not right here. That's not where I put it.
Here, let me see that. Mr. Adoy takes the sword and draws the blade from the scabbard. Examining the sword from hilt to tip, he notices a streak of blood which has recently dried to the edge. Launa, I think you are right. Something smells fishy, and it is not your fertilizer. Follow me. Let us find Corbat. I do believe there is more to this story that he can tell. They return to Corbat's house and find his mother out front sweeping the porch. Good afternoon again, Mr. Adoy. Have you returned for more tea? While your tea is quite lovely, we have actually returned to question Corbat. I'm so sorry. You just missed him. He left for the market in an awful hurry. He didn't even eat his breakfast. Master Adoy leads Launa down the road toward the market. There they find him at a local food stand talking to the cook. Did you hear Launa cut the dog's tail off? Turning to one of the patrons, he describes, it was the most vicious thing I've ever seen. Turning to another, he says, she even attacked a bear who was just looking for food. Stop right there. Here is the warrior of integrity that you accuse. Only a coward would spread rumors behind another's back. If you are a true warrior, look me in the eye and tell me what you really know. The master's fiery gaze pierces him to the soul. Corbat falls to his knees crying. I'm so sorry, Master. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't even see the dog there. The master turns to Launa. You have always worked hard. Even though you have made mistakes, you told the truth and atoned for it. I knew all along it could not have been you. Corbat, you have broken every tenet of a warrior. You can no longer be trusted and will no longer receive my training. Training? What training? You've done no more than treat us like slaves. I'm stronger than Launa anyway. I could kill 100 ninjas without your stupid sword. Upon hearing that, a dark figure steps forward out of the crowd which is formed. Your master's training must be great indeed if you can beat 100 ninjas, even without a sword, you say? My strength is my own. My master only had me do his gardening. And how about you, little girl? Do you just trim hedges with that? How many ninjas do you think you could slay with that butter knife?
Oh my, I would hope to never have to draw my blade against anyone.
Truly, she is a warrior working in the garden, not just a gardener stuck in a war. Do not mistake her meekness for weakness. So you say, old man. We shall see. The dark figure then steps back and fades like a shadow into the crowd. Steaming with anger and red-faced in embarrassment, Corbat turns his back to Mr. Adoy and Launa and retreats into the concealment of the forest.